Welcome. This is section 2 of part 1 on vulnerability management. In section 1, part 1, we covered a lot of topics with the introduction on vulnerability management, understanding its space, its role, its activities related to the ports, the life cycle, the tools and technologies. We also looked at governance and policy alignment. Now we move forward. We touch base on vulnerability scoring and prioritization framework. Let's look at now the various aspects under vulnerability scoring. Starts off with three major pillars. The first one is CVSS, or Common Vulnerability Scoring System. It is an industry standard for vulnerability severity. The score ranges from 0 to 10. It includes factors like attack factor, complexity, privileges, user interaction, and scope. In simple language, what is CVSS? The Common Vulnerability Scoring System is a standardized way to measure how serious a vulnerability is. It gives a score from 0 to 10 to show how dangerous a security weakness could be if not fixed. 0 means no risk at all. 10 means extremely critical and needs immediate attention. This scope helps security team to decide which issue to fix first. Now, why is CVSS important? Well, it gives a common language for rating vulnerability across all type of systems and industries. It helps prioritize which issue should be patched quickly. It makes it easier to explain to risk management, auditors, and non-technical stakeholders. Now, what factors are used to calculate the scores? Well, CVSS uses several questions to figure out the scores. Here are the main ones explained simply. It starts off with attack vector, that is, how does the attacker get in? It could be network. Can the attack over the internet, the most dangerous? Or is it from the same network, which is adjacent? Or local, that needs access to your system directly? Or physical, wherein it needs physical access to your devices? So these are the thought process on how does the attacker get in. The next is attack complexity. How hard is it for the attacker? When you say low, it means anyone with simple tools can do it, or it needs special condition or advanced skill. In such cases, it is high. The next thought process is, does the attacker need a login, or what privileges are required? If the answer is no login required, then it's a different category, wherein whether if he needs a full user rights, it comes in a different category. You can think through which one is more dangerous. The next aspect is user interaction. Means, does someone need to help accidentally or intentionally? If no user action is required, it would be a different condition. Or if a user needs to click a link or open a file, then it's a different bucket. The next thought process is, what can the attacker do? Can they see sensitive data after they get in? That is there an impact to confidentiality? Or can they change or corrupt the data, thereby impacting the integrity? Or can they shut down the system, that's impacting the availability? This is the thought process. thought process as to how to calculate this score. I hope this gives you a perspective on the CVSS. Now do note, 0 means none. There is no risk, no impact at all. But if there are else, what would be the scoring? So in such cases, the table is as shown. 0.1 to 3.9, severity low. Not a big risk, but still should be fixed. If it is from 4 to 6.9, medium. There is a moderate threat. Fix as part of the routine. If it is 7 to 8.9, the severity is high. A serious risk is observed. Fix as soon as possible. If it is between 9 and 10, it's critical, very dangerous. Fix immediately. This is 0 day, likely near to. Now, example of scoring and meaning we have done through, we have seen it. Now, let's look at the metrics group, metric and description. Base metrics. The base metrics are your attack vector, which is about how the attacker accesses the system. The base metrics include attack complexity, that is how complex the attack is. It also looks at privileges that is required, what user interaction would be done, what is the impact to confidentiality, integrity, availability. Now these are base metrics. The second metric group is temporal metrics, which include exploit code maturity. That is how mature and available is exploit code. High or functional or proof of concept or unproven. The second temporal metrics is remediation level. How available is a fix? Officially it's available, temporary or a workaround, or currently it's not available. That's your 0 day, where most of the time you might not have it also on near 0 day. Next temporal metrics is report confidence. How confident are you on the vulnerability? Are you confirmed it is, or it is reasonably yes, it's a fact, or it is true, or we don't know. The next metric group is environmental metrics, which has confidentiality requirement, that is importance of confidentiality in the environment. Next is integrity, and third is availability requirement. What does it mean? In summary, CVSS is like a thermometer for cyber threats. It tells you how hot or dangerous a vulnerability is so you can act quickly. It helps organization understand the risk clearly, prioritize remediation, stay compliant with security standards. Let's now look at the next aspect, the EPSS. Let's now look at the difference between EPSS and CVSS. But before that, what's EPSS? Well, EPSS or Exploit Prediction Scoring System is a system that predicts how likely it is that a known vulnerability will be exploited by the attacker in real world. That's within the next 30 days. While CVSS tells you how bad a vulnerability could be, EPSS tells you how likely it is to actually be used by the hacker. Now coming on, why EPSS is important? Well, it helps prioritize which vulnerability to fix first. It helps reduce wasted effort on low risk issues. makes vulnerability management more risk based and actionable. Now, how does EPSS work? Well, EPSS uses machine learning to analyze tons of data, such as, is there a public exploit code available for this vulnerability? How old or new is the vulnerability? How often is it being talked about online or in a security forum? Does it affect widely used software or systems? Suppose this, it gives a score from 0 to 0 and 1. So it is either 0 or 100%. The closer to 1, it is high chance of exploitation. A closer to 0 means low or no chance. Now let's look at the difference. Well, it has four aspects. Measure. CVSS is how severe a vulnerability is. EPSS, how likely it is to be exploited. Scoring is 0 to 1 for CVSS. EPSS is 0 to 1. CVSS is 0 to 10. It is used, CVSS is used for risk rating, while EPSS is used to prioritization based on real world data. The data source for CVSS is technical properties of the bug, whereas for EPSS it's threat intelligence and usage trends. Example, let's say you find two vulnerabilities. Vulnerability A has a CVSS of 9, but EPSS is 0.001. It means very severe but unlikely to be exploited. Do remember, the sample is CVSS is 9.8, but EPSS is 0.001. So when we say 0 near to 0, it indicates that it is unlikely to be exploited, while it is severe because CVSS says 9.8. The second case is vulnerability B, wherein the CVSS is 6.5. So earlier it was 9.8, now it is 6.5. 6.5 indicates it's a moderate severity. But the EPSS in this is 0.85. Example, it's near to 1. That means it's highly likely to be exploited. So which one you would pick up for fix? Vulnerability B, because the EPSS score is near to 1. So there is a higher risk. This is a thought process that one should have when looking at data for CVSS and EPSS and compare. In summary, CVSS is how bad is the weakness, whereas EPSS is how likely is it to be used by attackers soon. So EPSS is how likely. By combining both scores, you can make smarter, faster, and more accurate decisions in your vulnerability management process. I hope this helps you in some way. Now, throwing in one more attribute, the VPR. Now, what's VPR? VPR is vulnerability priority rating. It combines CVSS, exploit activity, malware exposure, and asset context. That's VPR. In simple language, VPR or vulnerability priority rating is a score that tells you how urgently you need to fix a vulnerability based on real world risk. It's a smarter way of ranking vulnerability by combining both technical like the CVSS and real world context like EPSS, threat activity and asset value. So why is VPR or vulnerability priority rating important? Well, if you think through, while CVSS tells you how bad a bug could be and EPSS predicts how likely it is to be exploited, VPR brings everything together to help you to decide what should I fix first to reduce the biggest risk to my business. So, how does a VPR work? Well, in simple terms, VPR uses multi-factor to calculate a score between 0 and 10, so just like CVSS. But it adds a business and threat lens to the rating. Yes, VPR considers CVSS score, that is how severe the vulnerability is, EPSS score, that is how likely it will be exploited, threat intelligence, is it being used in real world, or asset importance, that is the vulnerability on a critical system. Next is publicly availability of the exploit code. Next is exploit activity code. Is there a spike in hackers, chatter, or malware usage? That's how a VPR works. It considers all these aspects. We can take one more example wherein we say we have a vulnerability with the CVSS of 9.8, but it is on a backup test server and no one is exploiting it. The VPR would be something like a 5.2. Whereas a CVSS score, which is lower than the earlier you remember is 9.8, this one is 6.5, so it should be lower, isn't it? But it is customer facing payment system and it is actively been exploited. While in the first case CVSS was 9.8, in this case it is 6.5, but because it is customer facing payment system and been exploited, the VPR in this case would be 9.1. Earlier it was 5.2. All that I am trying to say is the higher the VPR indicates you fix that vulnerability first, even though it looks less dangerous on paper. So in comparison, what you see on the screen, CVSS, severity of the flaw. It helps to decide how technically dangerous it is. EPSS, likelihood of real world exploitation. It helps to decide if it has been targeted or used. VPR, it is business risk, threat risk, much more holistic, and helps you decide what to fix first based on the impact. So, a VPR is equal to smart priority score. It helps you cut through the noise and focus on the vulnerability that matter the most right now. It answers, is this vulnerability important to my business today? Is it being used by attackers in the wild? Should I fix it before others identify and finds it? This might give you a certain perspective. You can take a screenshot of this and see how it maps out to your organization. A large or good established organization might have a similar one. The numbers might vary. The x and y axis could have slight differences, but more or less this gives you a perspective on the heat map considering the CVSS, EPSS and VPR. Integration into enterprise risk management or ERM. There are three primary pillars: risk-based approach, key risk indicators, control frameworks. With risk-based approach, we are mapping vulnerabilities to business critical process or aligning with enterprise risk appetite. With KRIs or key risk indicators, wherein unpatched critical vulnerabilities are reviewed, average time to remediate are looked at, percentage of scanned systems are calculated. From a control framework perspective, you have NIST, Audit, ISO as a reference. Well, in simple language, enterprise risk management is a way an organization looks at all types of risk, whether it is financial, operational, compliance, cybersecurity, and more in a structured and connected way. Vulnerability management fits into this by helping identify and reduce the cyber risk that could impact business operations. Think of ERM as a company, big picture. Its approach towards risk looks at the top view. That's how the company will look at. And vulnerability management as one of the key tools that feed into it from the cybersecurity perspective. Hence, ERM as a company's big picture approach to risk. That's how you should look at ERM. That's what it means. Why is this integration important? Well, it helps connect technical risk like unpatched software with business outcomes like revenue losses or reputational damage. It helps ensures that the board and the leadership understand the cyber risk in business terms. It allows vulnerability to be managed as part of the organization's overall risk priority. So now, how vulnerability management fits into ERM? Let's take a step-by-step approach. Well, first, it's linking vulnerability management to business asset. Vulnerability management team identify vulnerability on servers, app, database, storage, etc. ERM translates that into business impact. Example, this vulnerability affects our payment system. That's what the ERM teams would do. Simple example, an unpatched bug in a billing system is seen not just an IT problem, but as a revenue risk. I hope you get the perspective now. From a risk scoring and prioritization perspective, vulnerability management tool gives the score, whether it is CVSS, EPSS, VPR, all together. ERM adds the business context, wherein the thought process is the system customer facing? Does it handle sensitive data? The result, decisions are based not just on technical dangers but also on the business importance. The next is incorporating vulnerability data into risk register. A risk register is a log for all major risks. Vulnerability management contributes entries like high risk vulnerability in cloud storage may lead to data leak. Delayed patching could lead to regulatory non-compliances. The benefit? Cyber risks are tracked alongside financial, legal and operational risks in a central place. That's the help which we get from a risk register, a good risk register. The next is KRI, or tracking the key risk indicators. Vulnerability management program can supply ERM with cyber KRIs like number of high risk vulnerability open for more than 30 days, or what is the patch compliance rate, or how many systems are scanned against the total system, or time to detect and fix the vulnerability. These indicators help measure and monitor risk levels over time. The next aspect is enabling risk based decision making. With vulnerability management integrated into the ERM, business leader can prioritize funding and resources, which is to help fix the most critical security issues first. Security team can align their work with strategic business goals. An example, the company invests in automating vulnerability patching for customer app because it reduces both the security and the reputational risk that would have come. The next aspect is enhancing audit and compliance reporting. ERM often deals with audits and regulations. Integrating vulnerability management makes it easier to show vulnerabilities are being managed consistently, risk is being reduced over time, and the organization is in control of its cyber exposure. So, in summary, vulnerability management tells you where the holes are. ERM tells you how much of these holes could hurt the business. I repeat, vulnerability management tells you where the holes are, while ERM tells you how much of this could hurt the businesses. By working together, they allow organization to make better decisions, protect what matters the most, communicate risk clearly to the board and the auditors, and help build long-term digital resilience. I hope this gives you a perspective to the risk managers when they are presenting why and what is ERM's integration all about, or basically what ERM brings to the table. Let's now look at the challenges in vulnerability management. There are quite a few. I've listed few on the screen. Starts with volume and complexity. What's this? It's thousands of new vulnerabilities per year. Thousands per product, per category, maybe more. Patch management lag, downtime concerns, legacy dependency, compatibility issues. Shadow IT and asset blind spot, which is unmanaged endpoints, rogue softwares. Next is lack of contextual intelligence. As I said earlier, not all high CVS vulnerabilities are business critical. Next is siloed functions, poor coordination between security and infrastructure team. These are real on-ground issues. To put it in a simple language, even though organization uses tools and processes to find and fix security weaknesses, there are still many real-world challenges that makes vulnerability management difficult. I would say extremely difficult. Let's look at these challenges one by one with easy to understand examples. When you say too many vulnerabilities, well, thousands of new vulnerabilities are discovered every year. It's an impossible to fix everything at once. Why it's a problem? Well, teams could get overwhelmed and may struggle to decide what to fix first. Do note, this is not the BAU. BAU is something that they would be doing. They have to take their time, effort, money, and investment on planning and resources to fix this vulnerability, and it is a ever growing area. Vulnerabilities keep getting discovered as new features, functionalities, product, and new exploits come out. So the input is not going anywhere. It keeps on coming. Simple example. Imagine finding 500 cracks in a wall. You need to decide which one are most dangerous before fixing all of them. The next is delay in patching. Well, fixing vulnerability often require patches, but applying patches can be delayed due to testing needs, business disruption, or downtime concern. Why it's a problem? Well, the longer a system remains unpatched, the more time attackers have to exploit it. They can exploit it leisurely if the vulnerabilities or the patches are not available. Simple example, it's like knowing your car has a faulty brake but waiting weeks to fix it because you are too busy driving it. Do note, a patch is also a code of potential configuration. Doesn't mean that a patch cannot induce a new set of vulnerabilities. So testing is required, not just to fix the gap but also to check whether it is not inducing anything new to the environment. It's creating more holes than fixing. You don't want that situation to be in. The next aspect is the shadow IT and unseen asset. Now, what's the challenge? Well, not all devices, app, or systems are properly tracked. Some are installed or operated without approval. This is called as shadow IT. Now, why it's a problem? Well, unmonitored systems don't get scanned or patched, leaving hidden openings for attackers. Simple example, it's like having a side door to your building that nobody remembers to lock. or even check. The next is lack of contextual intelligence. Now, what's the challenge here? Well, many organizations rely only on technical severity like the CVSS and do not consider business risk or real world threats. Why it's a problem? Well, a less severe issue on a customer facing system might be riskier than a high severity issue on a test server. Simple example, it's like fixing a leaky tap in a storage shed while ignoring a broken main pipe in your kitchen. Hope you understand the context. Then we have a case of tools overload and poor integration. Now, what's the challenge here? Well, the challenge is organizations. The challenge here is organization may use tools, scanner, patcher, but these often don't work well together. Why it's a problem? Well, data can be incomplete or disorganized, leading to delays or error in decision making. Simple example, it's like having multiple health report from different doctors but no one putting it all together to see the full picture. Next is poor collaboration between teams. Now, what's the challenge here? Well, the challenge is security IT operation, development team, business team often work in silos with little communication. Now, why it's a problem? Well, delays happen when no one knows who is responsible for fixing what or when they disagree on urgencies. Simple example, it's like security saying lock the doors while maintenance saying keep them open for repairs. Next is the false positive and noise. Well, the challenges here is vulnerability scanner can sometimes report issues that aren't real. They are not real threats, considered as false positives. Now, why is the problem? Well, too much noise wastes time and hides the real danger. Simple example, it's like a smoke detector that goes off every time you boil water. Result, eventually people stop listening. So when the real issue comes in, people ignore it, considering it as false. Do note, this is a big risk. The next is legacy system that can't be patched. The challenge, some old systems can't be patched because there is no longer support or would break if updated. Why it's a problem? Well, these systems remain vulnerable and require expensive workaround or extra protection. Simple example, it's like using an old phone that can't be security updated but is still connected to your bank's account. Yeah. The next one is incomplete scanning coverage. The challenge, not all part of IT environment can be scanned, especially mobile, cloud or remote system. Why is it a problem? Well, unscanned areas are blind spots where attackers can hide. Simple example, it's like cleaning your house but skipping the basement, even though that's where the rats are. Hope you understand the context here. Next is lack of metrics and reporting. The challenge, without proper tracking, it's hard to measure improvements or prove that risks are being managed. Why it's a problem? Well, executives and auditors don't get the visibility they need, and security team can't show their impact. Simple example, it's like trying to manage your health without checking your blood pressure or tracking your exercises. That's lack of metrics and reporting. In summary, managing vulnerabilities sounds simple, but the weakness, finding it and fixing it, well, while identifying is okay, we can get it, but in reality, it's full of challenges that requires good tool, clear communication, strong governance, and a business aligned approach. Overcoming these challenges leads to faster and smarter responses, better compliance with law, and a more secure and resilient organization. Do note, while I have highlighted 5, I have explained 10. The 5 are the most critical to start with, and then you can build on the rest. I hope you understand and get the perspective in this case. Let's now look at the vulnerability discovered annually. Well, it's a snapshot taken from an external source. The figures might be approximation based on publicly available data and may vary depending on the sources. But this gives you an indication. The objective here is to understand how things flow in this space. If you see, observe it carefully. The numbers are increasing year on year across the products. Nothing is untouched or nothing is consistent or stable. No, it's all increasing. If you observe from a Microsoft perspective, it's consistently high numbers of vulnerability, reflecting its extensive product range and widespread use in enterprise environments. When you look at Cisco, steady increase over the years, highlighting the importance of network security in both BFSI and telecom sector. And others were used. When you look at Oracle and SAP, gradual rise in reported vulnerabilities, emphasizing the need for regular patching and updates in enterprise application. When you look at VMware and Juniper, notable increase, underscoring the growing focus on virtualization and network infrastructure security. Fortinet and Palo Alto, well, there is incremental growth reflecting the evolving threat landscape and the critical role of firewall and security solutions. Huawei, consistent reporting indicating the importance of monitoring vulnerabilities in telecom equipments. Now, why I am showing this? Well, in your earlier presentation or slides, I had talked about contextual intelligence. Now, imagine if you don't have a right context, you end up boiling the ocean. Literally, everything that was listed as vulnerability on screen, you would have to go and patch if you don't have the right context with you. Pause through. Think through about what I just mentioned. Well, simple language, when security team finds vulnerability, they often get the technical details like the severity scores, description, and affected systems. But what they often don't get is the context needed to understand how dangerous is the vulnerability for us right now. This missing information is called as lack of contextual intelligence. What is contextual intelligence in this case? It means looking at more than just the technical score. It includes where the vulnerability exists, on which system or asset, how important that system is to the business, whether there are known attacks happening in the real world, whether there's public exploit code available. It includes if the attackers are actively scanning for it, or how easy it is to exploit, or whether fixing it will cause downtime or business impact. So, why is it a problem without context? Well, teams may waste time fixing low risk issues on non critical systems. Meanwhile, serious business risk might be left unaddressed. It leads to inefficient patching, overloading teams, and missing threats. Like I gave other examples, a vulnerability A might be having a CVSS score of 9.8, but it's on a test server. Whereas the second one, the CV score might be at a media, which might be 6.5, but it's on a customer facing. And hackers are actively using it in the wild. Without context, a team might fix the first vulnerability and leave the second. So who is at loss? Now, what happens when contextual intelligence is included? Well, vulnerabilities are prioritized based on business risk, not just technical scores. Teams focus on what matters the most. Faster remediation of high impact vulnerabilities are observed. Better communication with management and auditors in a business language and not techie jargons. So, how to improve contextual intelligence in vulnerability management? Well, use the VPR. Remember, the vulnerability priority rating, or tools that combine the technical and the business and the threat data. Integrate asset critical rating into your CMDB. Pull in the threat intelligence feed, whether it is CISA keys, Mitre attack, etc. Tag vulnerability by business function and data sensitivity. Map the vulnerabilities to regulatory impact, whether it is GDPR, PCI DSS, etc. Now, in summary, lack of contextual intelligence is like knowing there's a fire but not knowing where it is, what's burning, or how close it is to your family. You can't make smart decision without the full picture. Adding context help you fix what matters faster and with less risk. So now let's touch base on the best practices and your optimization strategy. There are few pillars in this space, starting with establishing a risk-based vulnerability management program, which is about combining intelligence, asset criticality, and business context. Next is continuous monitoring and scanning. Then is prioritized remediation playbook integrated with CI/CD pipeline, cross team collaboration. Now, what does it mean in simple language? Well, managing vulnerability is not just about scanning and patching. To do it effectively and efficiently, organizations must follow certain best practices and use smart optimization strategies to improve speed, accuracy, and risk reduction. So let's try to break it down. Well, focus on risk, not just scores. Don't treat all vulnerability the same. Prioritize them based on real world risk, not just CVSS scores. The strategy is use tools that combine CVSS, EPSS, VPR, and business context, like where the vulnerability exists and how important the system is. Example, fix a medium issue on your customer facing server before a high issue on your old backup system. Next is make vulnerability management a continuous process. The best practice is scan once a month is no longer enough. New vulnerabilities appear daily, so your scanning frequency should increase, if possible daily, on critical system multiple times in a day if feasible. The strategy is use tools that support continuous or real-time scanning, especially for critical systems, cloud environment, and remote devices. Example, agent-based scanning tools that checks for new issues every day, not just doing it during a scheduled scan. The go-to approach is automate wherever possible. Automate repetitive tasks like patch deployment, ticket creation, reporting. The strategy is use patch management system or a SOAR tool or integrate vulnerability management into DevOps pipelines for auto remediation. Example, automatically push patches to non-critical systems overnight, reducing manual workload and downtime. Use asset context for smart prioritization. That is, understand the importance of each assets in your network. Link vulnerability scanners to your CMDB. So each finding is tied to the business criticality score. Tag your payment system example as high priority and treat any vulnerabilities there as urgent. As simple as that. Create a standard playbook for remediation. Have a clear, repeatable steps for common type of vulnerabilities. Build remediation playbook for things like Apache bug or Windows privilege escalation, etc. Example, when a known SQL injection is found, your playbook defines the step to test, patch, verify, and close the issue. Next is integrate vulnerability management into change and release management. The best practice here is link the VM to your IT change control and deployment cycle. The strategy is make it a rule. Before new code goes into the system or goes live, they must pass through a vulnerability check. Example, a new app version can't be deployed unless all high risk vulnerabilities are fixed or approved for mitigation. Communicate with the business in their language. Translate security issues into business risk for leadership and other teams. Use the strategy, use a dashboard, heat map, risk score that shows impact in simple terms. Example, instead of saying CVSS 9.8, say this issue could cause data loss for 1 million customer. That's the language the business understands. The next is track metrics to improve over time. That is, monitor and measure your performance with clear metrics. The strategy should be track things like time to detect, time to fix, percentage of critical systems scanned, patch compliance rate, percentage of vulnerability open for more than 30 days. Report to leadership every month. Example, 95% of the critical system patched within SLA. A good metrics, the business understands this. Collaborate across teams. Best practice is to work closely with IT, DevOps, business teams, not just security. The strategy should be set up shared goals, shared dashboard, and weekly sync up to remove blockers. Example is security discovers the vulnerability, IT fixes its risk, validates it. This is how you close the loop. Learn from past incidents. Well, after every major vulnerability event, perform a lesson learned review. The strategy should be document what went wrong, what worked, and how to improve the process for next time. Example, if patching was delayed during a certain period, how plan now how to create an emergency patching playbook. So in summary, efficient vulnerability management means having the right focus, having the smart tools, and a clear collaboration. Follow this best practices. It helps the organization by reducing the risk faster, spending less time fixing low priority issues, helps in improve compliance with audit readiness, and strengthens trust and cyber resilience. In summary, if you this is a screenshot or the table which gives you the practice areas, best practices, and why it matters. We discussed this, we covered this topic, but this gives you a summary view. I'd request you to pause the screen, take this shot, compare it against your own practice areas, best practices, and see how much of this is already covered and what is required more. Align your according to this, or you can do the other way around. The point here important is this is a scope that you can take as a reference when you are having your strategic discussion or when you are planning your strategy. Automation and AI in vulnerability management. Well, there are four aspects here. One is automated scanning and patch deployment. Next is predictive analytics, then SOAR integration, and NLP. Well, in simple language, let's look at each. Well, as cyber threat grows in number and complexity, it's getting harder for human teams alone to manage all the vulnerabilities quickly and accurately. That's where automation and artificial intelligence come in. They help make vulnerability management faster, smarter, and more efficient. Let's break them to figure out how they help. The first is automated scanning and patch deployment. What it does? Well, automatically scans systems for known vulnerability on a regular schedule, and in some cases even apply patches without human help. Well, why does it help? Well, it saves time, reduces human error, and keeps the system up to date with minimal delay. Simple example like having a robot check all the doors and windows in the building every night and log the ones you forgot. That's automated scanning and patch deployment. From a auto ticketing and workflow trigger perspective, well, when a vulnerability is found, automation can open a ticket in your IT system like ServiceNow and assign it to the right team and start the response process instantly. Why it helps? Well, it removes the manual steps, speeds up the response, and ensures nothing is missed. Simple example, it's like getting an instant to-do list the moment a problem is discovered. The next aspect is AI for predictive prioritization. What it does? Well, AI can look at a trends and data like which vulnerability hackers using most and predict which ones are most likely to be exploited. Well, it helps to prioritize the riskiest vulnerability. It helps avoid wasting time on low impact issues. Simple example, it's like weather forecast for cyber threats, telling you which storm are likely to hit. The next aspect is machine learning and pattern recognition. Well, AI can learn from past incidents to recognize patterns in system behaviors or attackers' activity. Well, it helps in detecting unusual or suspicious behavior, flags vulnerability that could be linked to active attack. A simple example is like a smart surveillance system that remembers what normal looks like and raises the alarm when something feels off. The next is NLP or natural language processing for intelligence parsing. Well, AI can read through massive amount of threat reports, blogs, advisories and security bulletin to extract useful vulnerability information. But it helps in speeding up the threat intelligence gathering. It helps security teams stay ahead of attackers. Simple example, it's like having a digital assistant that can read 1,000 pages a day and summarize what you need to know. Let's look at the security, orchestration, automation and response or SOAR. Well, it's a platform that brings together scanning, alerts, ticketing, patching and reporting, automating the entire vulnerability management workflow. It helps reduce response time, ensure consistent handling of vulnerabilities, frees up human analysts to focus on more complex issues. Simple example, it's like a smart factory where everything is connected and runs automatically when a problem is detected. Let's try to look at the benefits of AI in vulnerability management. Well, first benefit is faster detection and response. It impacts, reduces time attackers have to exploit issues. Second benefit is reduce human workload. The impact, it lets team focus on high value tasks. The next benefit is smarter decisions. The impact is it helps to focus on what really matters. Next benefit is consistency and compliance. With AI, you can ensure standards are followed every time. Next benefit of AI is scalable protection. It helps in works across large and complex environment. In summary, automation handles the repetitive work while AI adds the brain power to make better decisions. Together, they help organizations find, understand, and fix vulnerability faster, smarter, and at scale. Let's look at the use cases. There are quite a few that's in the screen. From an automation area perspective, scanning, the benefits are freeing up the analyst time, ensuring consistent, continuous coverage, so on and so forth. You can pause this screen, go through it. We discussed this a few minutes back. This tabulation helps you to get it all together. You can use this as a reference, compare it against your own, and see which part of it is missing, and you can build on it. I hope this helps in some way. Let's now look at future trends in vulnerability management. There are quite a few areas. One is attack surface management, AI powered predictive remediation, zero trust integration, and cyber digital twins. Now, what is this? What are these? Well, vulnerability management is changing quickly because of the rise of cloud computing, artificial intelligence, remote work, and more advanced cyber threat. The future of vulnerability management is all about becoming faster, smarter, and more business aware. Let's explore the key trends shaping the future. The first is ASM or Attack Surface Management. So, what's changing? Well, organizations are realizing that attack surface, all the place a hacker could try to break in, is much bigger than they thought. Trend: future vulnerability management tool will include attack surface management, which tracks everything you own, which could be on-prem, cloud, mobile, IoT, third party, and check it for risk, even the things you forgot about. Simple example, it's like having a drone that flies over your entire digital house and shows you every open window and unlocked doors, even the one you once behind the garage. So that's your ASM. Next is AI powered predictive remediation. Well, organization won't just want to know what's broken, but also what's likely to be attacked soon. The trend is using AI and ML, that is machine learning in this case. Future vulnerability management system will be able to predict which vulnerability are most likely to be exploited, or which systems are most at risk, or what fixes should be applied first automatically. Simple example, it's like a weather app that doesn't just tell you it's raining, it tells you where, when, and what kind of umbrella you would need. Isn't that wonderful? The next is integration with zero trust security. Now, what's changing? Well, the shift to zero trust model means no system or user is trusted by default, even inside the networks. Trend: well, vulnerability management will be deeply tied into zero trust architecture. If a system has unresolved vulnerability, its access may be restricted or blocked until it's fixed. Simple example, it's like needing a clean medical report before being allowed into a secure area. The next is real time risk scoring and threat correlation. Well, businesses want more real time risk based insight, not static monthly report. Future tools will offer live dashboards showing which vulnerability matter right now by correlating them with active attack campaign, threat intel, and business criticality. Simple example, it's like a health monitor of your IT systems, warning you before a heart attack and not after. The next is cyber digital twins. Now, what's that? Well, simulations and modeling are becoming part of cyber planning. Vulnerability management will use digital twins, that is, virtual models of your system, to simulate what would happen if a vulnerability was exploited. This helps test scenarios and prepare before a real attack. This is the way forward. Simple example, it's like flight simulation for cybersecurity, training, testing without crashing the real plane. Isn't that going to be useful with your strategy planning? Knowing it way before it actually occurs. Even if it's not occurring, you know what will be the case when it actually hits. You are ready for it. Next is cloud native and API first tools. Well, cloud infrastructure is now the norm, and many traditional VM tools are too slow or incompatible. Future Vulnerability management tools will be built natively for cloud with API first design to plug in the CI CD pipelines, DevOps tools, and cloud platforms like AWS, Azure, and GCP. Simple example, it's like trading a paper map for Google Map, faster, real time, and built for where you are going. The next is regulatory and compliance alignment. Organization needs to meet growing compliance demand, whether it is DORA, GDPR, PCI DSS, etc. The trend is VM platforms will include pre-built compliance modules that maps vulnerability to regulatory framework automatically and help generate audit-ready reports. Simple example, it's like having tax software that fills in the right form based on your financial records. The next is human in the loop plus AI collaboration, the future trend. While automation is raising, human judgment is still critical. Modern vulnerability management tool will combine AI suggestions with human approval, letting teams stay in control while saving time. Simple example, it's like GPS that suggests the best route but lets you decide whether to take the detour or not. In summary, the future of vulnerability management is all about being faster, smarter, more connected, more secure, and more strategic. Do note, while I discussed in detail 8 aspects, I have shown 4. These 4 are the top ones. If you focus on these, then you can go for the next 4. But prioritizing these 4 is time consuming, it takes a lot of effort and energy. So, you can plan your strategies around this space. I hope this helped you in your planning. Let's now look at metrics and reporting for management. Well, we discussed this in many cases earlier. Let us look at in simplified language as to what it means. Well, in vulnerability management, it's not enough to find and fix weaknesses. You also need to track progress, measure effectiveness, and communicate results to leadership, auditors, and other stakeholders. That's where metrics and reporting come in. These metrics help answers questions like, are we improving our security posture, or how fast are we fixing critical vulnerabilities, or are we meeting compliance requirement, or which system are still at risk. Now, why does metrics matter to management? Well, it provides visibility into security risk across the organization. It enables data driven decisions about investments, staffing, or automation. It helps demonstrate compliance and due diligence to regulators and auditors. It supports business alignments by showing risk in terms of impact, not just technical scores. Let's look at some common metrics. The mean time to remediate. What it shows? It shows the average time taken to fix vulnerability after discovery. The next is open or open high or critical vulnerability. It shows unresolved issues that pose high risk to the business. The patch compliance rate. It shows the percentage of systems that are fully patched, especially critical systems. The next is vulnerability open for greater than 30 days. It shows aging issues that increases the exposure if left unaddressed. Scan coverage, that is, shows the percentage of total assets that has been regularly scanned. False positive, that shows the percentage of scan results that were flagged but turned out not to be real issues. Rescan verification, percentage of remediated vulnerability confirmed as fixed through rescan. Risk based fix rates, that is, percentage of vulnerabilities prioritized and resolved based on risk context. Audit readiness score, which is readiness of regulatory review or security audit. Executive scorecard, a high level summary of security posture for management visibility. Let's look at a checklist. Maybe this will help you get the story together, all that we discussed till now. How do you start about going managing it? Well, you start by defining a set of core metrics aligned with business goals. Next, track the MTTR for all vulnerability, especially the critical ones. Monitor scan frequency and coverage across all asset types. Identify and report vulnerability aging greater than 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and so on. Maintain a patch compliance dashboard by business unit. Next, tag your vulnerability by asset criticality and risk impact. Follow it by validating remediation with follow up scans. Then measure false positive rate to refine your scanner accuracy. Report using simple, visual, and business friendly languages. Include trends over time, whether it is weekly, monthly, or quarterly. Automate the report generation for executive and audit use. Map the reporting to your compliance framework. This framework is the one which you are following as an organization. How do you show you are aligned? You need a mapping. So ensure that you are reporting and mapping to the framework that you are using. In summary, metrics are the dashboard of your security program. Without them, you are flying blind. With them, you can steer, improve, and justify every decision you make. Effective reporting helps bridge the gap between technical findings and business priority. In conclusion, vulnerability management is no longer an isolated technical function. It's a core discipline in the pursuit of cyber resilience. In a threat landscape defined by rapid changes and increasing sophistication, a proactive and integrated vulnerability management program act as an immune system of the digital enterprise. When aligned with governance, risk, and compliance strategy, and fueled by automation and threat intelligence, vulnerability management evolves from a reactive task to a strategic advantage. An organization modernizes their infrastructure, adopt cloud native architecture, and embrace AI, the complexity of vulnerability will only increase. However, with the right governance, collaboration, and continuous innovation, organization can not only reduce their attack surface but also build enduring trust and operational confidence. Well, with this, we have reached the end of part 1. Do note part 1 has two videos covering the full aspect of the agenda. So, with this, we have completed part 1. The overall series has 4 parts. Post this, there are specific 3 areas that I would be covering. I would like to thank all who have supported me in this. Special thanks to my guardian, mentor, Mr. Ganapati, Shri Ekadanta, Mr. Vakratunda, and all my support from the Ganas. Thank you very much. For the audience, if you think that this has helped you in any way, do subscribe. And important is share this with anyone you think can benefit, can help them to learn, understand, or build this space. Do note, this is something which is freely available, hence, no one should be left out because of a charge. There is nothing of that in this. This is available for anyone and everyone who has an interest in this subject. So, do share this. Share as much as possible within your risk team, your audit world, your governance team, your controls teams, teams which are managing regulators, team which are managing your vulnerability management, cybersecurity team. Anyone who can benefit from this, do share. It would be a pleasure and an honor. Hence, thanking you again. This is your host, Savit Vittal Salian. See you in part 2. Namaskar.